In this episode, I'm going to reveal why we're really leaving Florida for Sweden, and it's probably not exactly what you think. So, if you listen to the episode, the final episode that April and I did, the farewell and, looking back on an era episode, then you already heard the bombshell that I dropped, which is we are leaving Fort Myers, Florida for the Stockholm metro region of Sweden. Big picture, why we're ultimately doing this is because we've analyzed what is going to work best for our entire family unit, the four of us, and that is going to be moving closer to family in Sweden, so my husband's side of the family, so that we can have a more robust and versatile support system where everybody has a contemporary. So the kids will have cousins that are pretty much almost exactly their same age. Like my son and my nephew are literally 1 week apart to the day. And my daughter and niece are 3.5 months apart. By coincidence, no, it was not planned. Yes, people have asked that, and that's super weird and freaky. At least for me, with my sister-in-law, no, that would certainly not be planned. It's just coincidence, and it's certainly convenient, but it hasn't been because we've been living 5,200 miles apart, and we've only been seeing them once a year. We go there. We've been going there once a year to Sweden, but my in-laws, so my husband's parents, have been visiting Florida twice a year, once every 8 months or so. So I want to clarify, my mom lives here right by us. And we are so close. She's only 60. She's a young 60, and she's been retired for a few years, which is such a gift. And she's very active and able-bodied. And she has been such an incredible support to me, Rick, the kids individually and also together, and just to our home, our lives, She's been such a big part of our lives and so meaningful. And at the same time, it's not only unfair to her to place, the onus for all the support we need onto her whenever we need it. It's just impractical, unrealistic. She or anyone wouldn't have the bandwidth for that, like most people would not. And it's also not fair to the kids or to us, as much as we love and admire and respect and appreciate her and all the support that she's given. The fact of the matter is, I've realized that I just have a small family, and it keeps feeling like it gets smaller and smaller. And I say that, I said that with a chuckle, but it's also kind of sad, honestly. So, I love my family, especially my mom, but it doesn't change the fact that my brother is 5 years my junior, and we love each other very much, but I certainly wouldn't call us close. There's also the interesting dynamic that even though my dad, who we text regularly and we'll see each other for like big family events, and even though he's going to be 68 in a few months, and even though he only lives 45 minutes away, he has not retired, and he's like still a workaholic just as much as he was 30 years ago. And on top of that, he has 2 daughters who are 5 and 6 years old. So I'm 35, and I have 5 and 6-year-old half sisters who, obviously with a 30-year age gap, they don't even feel like sisters. It feels like nieces, honestly. Yeah, it feels like nieces. And I have to remind myself often, like, oh yeah, I have sisters, because I don't even think of them in that light. So imagine you're 67, not retired by choice. I think, this is my speculation, because I think it's wonderful to love your work so much that you never want to let it go. But it's also like, you gotta slow down at some point. And like, when is that point going to come? And I know how exhausting it can be just being a 35-year-old with a 1.5-year-old and a 3.5-year-old. I can't even fathom being almost 68 with a 5 and a 6-year-old who are very active with their extracurricular activities and have a ton of energy. So the reason I say all this is because he is not in grandpa mode. I don't see him being in grandpa mode anytime soon. And I think eventually when he is in grandpa mode, when he's like 95, he will be certainly too old and tired to be a present and active grandpa, right? You know, it's to me like FaceTimes with the kids, just FaceTimes alone and seeing them a couple times a year in like a big group setting just isn't going to cut it. Now, I really do want to emphasize we're not running away from anything. I know like so far everything I've said has made it sound that way incorrectly. We're not running away from anything in Florida. We're simply running towards something more in Sweden. And no, I didn't just make that up euphemistically. You know, we have very happily been in Florida State for 4 years. And half the time was in St. Pete, Florida. And then the other half of the time, so these past 2 years, were in Fort Myers, Florida. And I think that served our family very well when we had, you know, newborns and just older infants. Now that we have 2 toddlers, it just simply makes more sense for many reasons to be in Sweden. And I also want to give this disclaimer. I am not naive to the fact that there's no such thing as a perfect city or a perfect country that can check all your boxes and meet all your family's needs. It doesn't exist. So there are trade-offs. We're going to be leaving some privileges and benefits and perks behind in favor for different ones. All we have to do right now is just think about like really what's best for our family unit. And it's living in Sweden for the purpose of that more robust and more versatile family and friendship community. And so it's not just my in-laws, my husband's parents, and it's not just my sister-in-law, her partner. They're basically like husband and wife at this point. They're just not technically married, but they're middle school sweethearts and their 2 kids, my niece and nephew. It's not just that. But because my husband, Eric, was born and raised in Sweden, spent the first 3 decades of his life there, pretty much almost all of his childhood friends and neighborhood friends from school that he grew up with are still living and working there. And they either have recently had kids or are about to have kids. It's kind of the perfect setup for us. In contrast, what community in terms of our peers has looked like in Florida is honestly not really what we had anticipated or hoped for, despite my best efforts. Now listen, I'm not here to play victim or like say, oh, woe is me. I have, not a strong enough in-person community here. I do think there's a real possibility that I was putting out maybe a subconscious vibe, knowing that we're going to move soon. Maybe there's a vibe of like an energy I'm giving off, like I don't have the capacity for this. Even though I want this in-person community, I'm also like, how much of myself can I really give? What do I want to commit my time to? At the same time, it's also true that the efforts I have made with the moms that I have wanted to get closer to have gone unreciprocated many times. Like there's just, and I've really sat down and analyzed like, why is that? What's going on here? I think there's a couple factors at play. Our schedules are just so off, despite the fact that we have kids around the same age. And just thinking back to the Mother's Helper episode I did, I think the biggest disparity, honestly, is that I'm a stay-at-home mom and I'm around my kids all day, and I'm looking for another like-minded stay-at-home mom who wants to get together, ideally sometime between lunch and dinner, and like chit-chat as mom friends while we let the kids run free and play wild, totally child-led, like in the backyard. And that's never going to happen because a lot of the moms I've connected with are full-time working, whether it's in the home or outside of the home. So if it's in the home, they have a nanny for like the first few years, and then their kid goes to preschool typically. And if they're outside of the home, well, then they're outside of the home. What happens when we go to the playground or park is I'm always the first one to initiate conversation, and it goes really well. I would say 75% of the time, I'm able to find a mom friend instantaneously, and we're able to hit it off, whether it's just kind of surface level or getting into big, deep talk, which is obviously more fulfilling and gratifying. And we end up exchanging numbers, or we're just like, okay, yeah, like see you this day, this time. And it just never comes to fruition. I think in America, our cultures were always so busy and we revere busyness and productivity. We see it as a good thing that our kids are in every single activity and extracurricular under the sun. And I think a lot of moms, it's just not jibing with what I want, what I like to do, honestly. I think that moms have nighttime babysitters or nannies who come, or they have kids who just sleep through the night, like they're in that stage where they've sleep trained their babies to sleep through the night. So then they're getting together after hours. And frankly, if it's after 4 p.m., I'm not leaving the house. Like, that is a very unusual occasion. I am in a very different season of life than my fellow peer mom friends or prospective mom friends, really. So this whole idea of like child-led free play, where the moms can sit back and chat, or like we can help each other out around the house and take turns with that while we connect. Like, okay, let's fold laundry together while we connect. That is either just too boring or repulsive to moms, or they're honestly intentionally so busy and backed up either with their own activities or their kids' activities that it's not coming to fruition. In contrast, yes, of course, kids have activities and they do sports in Sweden. It's much later. Everything is later. And I think now I know for a fact that that's better. It's like not even that I think it is. It's been proven that it's better to delay that stuff in general. There's such a bigger focus on true family connection and also families in community with one another, despite the fact that in Sweden, everyone is very individualistic. I do think overall, even though I like to engage with others and do deep talk, I think overall my personality type will be better suited in Sweden because I am an extroverted introvert. And Swedes are known for being very insular, like it's very every man for himself. However, there's also this element of community. So how do you reconcile that? It's not about fluffy, meaningless, superficial small talk. It's very much about like privacy and respect, like respecting space and boundaries. But once you've really invested the time to get to know someone, then you really have quality, deep conversation. And come to think of it, that is what I prefer. It's what I gravitate towards. So, it boils down to community. And specifically in the season of life, I feel that my family is small, although meaningful. And I love my mom very much. It's going to be very sad and hard to leave. And at the same time, Eric and I need comrades, contemporaries, our age, that are close friends and family. And that hasn't really worked out for us in person here. I have a really strong, it's funny, like all my closest friends, we share audio notes all the time. We're exchanging audio notes. We hop on calls. We have such strong virtual relationships. And yet like just the big missing piece of this puzzle is that in-person community. I have made lots of unreciprocated efforts, I feel, with prospective mom friends to be like, hey, let's get together and do this. But at the end of the day, it boils down to conflicting work schedules. And then on the weekends, because I feel like I'm so busy and like with the kids all day during the week, I like to kind of unwind and not do like a specific activity per se on the weekend. Like, sure, we do family outings and stuff, but we're not like going out to eat at restaurants and like we're not going to parties late at night. I would love just a simple gathering in the backyard with like some hors d'oeuvres. Is that crazy? Is that boring? And like the kids can run around and play. That just hasn't been a thing. Like there's kids as young as 2 years old and 3 years old in like Wii ball, or I don't know if they're 2 and 3, maybe they're 4, in Wii ball practice on a Saturday morning. That just stresses me out. That just doesn't sound enjoyable. And honestly, I know the kids wouldn't like that either. Sorry. So I know I sound kind of like mopey about it, but instead of just complaining and whining about it, we're doing something about it. And yeah, culturally, it is different in Sweden. Yes, you do have both mom and dad working full time. Doesn't necessarily have to be outside of the home. But yes, they are working full time. However, there's just such an emphasis on quality family time and balance, work-life balance. So I made a short list of some things I'm most looking forward to and some things I'm going to miss in Florida and some things I'm not looking forward to having in Sweden, just so you can see where my head is at. And a lot of this is through the lens of being a mother of two little ones. So first off, I am most looking forward to this concept of third spaces and having access to more third spaces in general and better ones. So Eric introduced me to this idea of first, second, and third spaces. He didn't coin the term, he just introduced it to me. Imagine your first space is your home. Your second space is your place of work if you work outside of the home. So your office, let's say, your company. Your third space is really just an informal, communal place where anybody can gather, almost like a public square or a plaza. So specifically in Sweden, and we're going to be living in the Stockholm metro region, the forest. And depending on the season of the year, there's a lot you can do here. But imagine just being able to walk from your home literally into a forest, forage chanterelle mushrooms and blueberries, and it smells really nice, so you're activating your senses. It's the perfect place to decompress, have conversation with friends or family. You can go sledding with your kids, just clear your head. For contrast, in Florida, for many months out of the year, it's really sticky and humid and hot. It's not very pleasant to walk outside. I'm sure I'm going to regret saying all of this when I'm in the bone-chilling cold in the cold, dark winter of Sweden. But hey, this is where my head's at right now at 11:30 at night in Fort Myers, Florida at the end of December. Public parks and squares, cafes, playgrounds. And there's an interesting difference with playgrounds in Stockholm versus in Fort Myers. So in the Stockholm metro region, playgrounds are very much embedded within the city. They're almost like a part of the city infrastructure. You can easily walk from a restaurant or cafe or museum or school to a playground, similar with the surrounding burbs, and it's all very walkable. In Fort Myers, if we want to get our sillies or wiggles out or just get some outdoor activity, it's very much about you have to load up the car, drive to the playground, go there, have your structured playground time and drive back. We, especially Eric, being a European, having lived there for 30 years, literally, we're so over needing to drive everywhere. We're just done. We're done with the strip mall culture of Fort Myers. It's not aesthetic to look at. It's not enjoyable to be spending half our day in a car. So we're really excited to walk around everywhere. What I'm nervous about. I am nervous about digital ID laws, especially with lack of privacy, overreach, big government control, and what this means for our family in the future. Just having the government having too much access and control over what we can access. There's really nothing I can do about this as far as I know, unless I want to be a total outcast in society and not have access to basic things like banking or the school system or healthcare. But like I said, there's no such thing as a perfect place. And I've lived in 7 states. I've lived in New York, Massachusetts, Connecticut, Missouri, Florida, Oregon, and Texas. And I've spent extensive time outside of America in a variety of countries. So again, there's some pretty big trade-offs. I know that in America, we tend to say everything is better in Scandinavia. Everyone does everything better. I think they do a lot of things better. Don't get me wrong. I'm still very excited for our move, but I'll be the first to say there's no such thing as the perfect place, Hey there. I want to pause here for just a moment. If this conversation is resonating with you, there are a couple of ways you can support the show and receive deeper support. First, a quick ask. If you're listening on Apple, leaving a written review in addition to a star rating makes a huge difference in helping new listeners find this show. And if you're on Spotify, a star rating goes a long way. It's the easiest free way to support Moms Off the Record. So thank you in advance. Next, If your child is struggling with potty training, whether that's night training, withholding, regressions, accidents, or you're just feeling stuck for any reason, I offer one-on-one potty training consulting, and I would love to help your little one get back on track. Finally, if you want deeper, ongoing conversation and support around all things pregnancy, birth, motherhood, and beyond, in a supportive place for nuanced and uncensored dialogue, I would love to invite you into the private Moms Off the Record community. Here, you will be in the company of dozens of holistic moms. I am personally responding to questions within the community daily, and nobody gets lost in the shuffle. Meet other moms just like you who are intentional and question mainstream motherhood narratives. You'll find links to everything in the show notes. All right, let's get back to the episode. Okay, Florida is also known as the medical freedom state, especially if you're into that sort of thing, which if you're listening, you probably are. It's been very easy sending Julian to his preschool with our vaccine exemption. What's nice is, and I guess people are surprised by this, Sweden doesn't actually have any vaccine mandates. So you don't have to prove your child is vaccinated against anything in order for them to attend school. This is because education is seen as a human right. So regardless of what you do with your child, they have the right to go to school, which I find very fascinating and I do appreciate. I don't respect the fact that homeschooling is illegal in Sweden. I do think that that should be up to the parents, regardless of what your views on school are. That said, I've come to terms with the fact that it's illegal and that the kids will be in school because the school system is way more aligned with my personal philosophies in parenting than either the public or private school system is in America. In America, there's barely any recess. The food is total garbage. There's tons of indoctrination, even if you're at a private school. And there's such an emphasis and pressure on early academics to the point of kids, especially young boys, getting ADHD diagnoses, going on medication. Girls have anxiety, boys have anxiety. Such an overemphasis on academics and like getting into the best school. And these kids are overscheduled to the max. So in Sweden, it's nothing of the sort. School, I think, even gets out a little bit earlier. Formal academics do not start until 6 years old, so a full year later than America. It used to be 7, now it's 6. Hopefully they don't decrease it even further. I don't think they will. There's just such an emphasis on family and work life and school balance. What I am looking forward to, I am looking forward to it, and I'm nervous. Honestly, it's a mixed bag. Should we decide to have a third baby, I do know that there would just be automatically more like community support, I will never say there's free healthcare or any kind of free benefit. All that means is it's taxpayer subsidized. Nothing is free. Money doesn't grow on trees. You're either paying for it up front, like it'll come out of your paycheck, or you're going to pay for it after you get hit with the bill, and then you'll pay the bill after. So it's either the beginning or the end. You're just maybe not seeing the money come out as blatantly. That said, I'm okay with paying taxes. Even though I now identify as conservative, I'm okay paying taxes so long as we actually reap the benefits of what we're paying taxes towards, and it makes sense. It's for the greater good. So that I can kind of get behind in Sweden, even though I think the tax rate is outrageous. Like that's a huge culture shock. But yeah, I can get behind that if you actually see the benefits, like what's happening at the end after you pay the taxes. We don't really have that situation in America. I've never experienced that. So I've had the privilege, because of the sacrifices we've chosen to make and the life we've chosen to create, I've had the privilege of being able to step outside of the workforce for 3.5 years to be at home with my kids. In Sweden, what they have is technically an upgrade for most people, I would say, coming from America or most of the world. But for me, it's actually, I actually would have more freedoms being in America, but I'm sort of okay with the situation in Sweden. I'm a little nervous about it if we have a third baby. Basically, it would be about an 8 to 9 month paid leave, paid at 80% of like your base salary. Paid leave, mom first would take it off typically, for breastfeeding purposes primarily and bonding. And then 8 months would go to dad while mom is back to work. And then after that period, so at around 16 months old, give or take, your child is expected to go into preschool. Preschool is anything below 5 years old. So they divide the classes sort of by age range, but any child from about, just under a year and a half old to just under 5 years old, it's all for skola, preschool. And then after that is kindergarten and then like primary school. So I'm just thinking of Lucy, who, has a very delicate and sensitive nervous system and lots of separation anxiety. I really can't fathom putting her in any sort of a preschool, no matter how wonderful it is or how part-time it is right now. So that does make me nervous for baby 3. And, there's just a very cultural outlook on school. Like, it's not considered bad by any stretch to have a young child of a year and a half old in school in Sweden. And it's just a part of how their social structure works. It's actually considered a very good thing for the whole family. I am nervous about birth stuff, I'll admit. I have, vacillated on my views, and I've changed my views, especially with everything that's come to light with, free birth in general, and I've done some reflection. So I absolutely would still want another home birth, but I would want to be in the company of a licensed midwife just in case anything were to happen. The issue is, as of right now, I've done some just cursory research on this. In Sweden is very conservative and cautious when it comes to any kind of risk, especially around health. They like to take many, 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 many years before they adopt new protocols and recommendations. So even though Sweden is very pro-mother-baby dyad, all about extended breastfeeding and baby wearing and like a wonderful mother-baby culture, when it comes to birth, like 99.9% of births are still in the hospital, which I find interesting. So home birth is still really fringe. It's kind of up and coming in Sweden. It's really taboo, really hard to access home birth midwives. There's a ton of barriers. You probably would have to pay out of pocket. I don't even think it would be covered by the healthcare system like a hospital birth would be, which that's fine. It's like not great. I would love to just have like the free birth, which is really just taxpayer subsidized. But hey, that's our taxpayer dollars going towards it, right? That's our money. The thing is though, and I don't know how they would know this for sure, I guess the C-section scar I have, but if you've had any prior C-section, even if you've had a successful VBAC, which I've had, a home birth VBAC, the last time I checked, and I hope this has changed or will change since then, they will not let you have another home birth VBAC. So yes, Sweden is and has been very VBAC friendly, but in the hospital. So let me just reframe that. They're okay with VBACs. In fact, they actually encourage VBACs instead of repeat C-sections, which I think is really cool. However, even if you've already proven to have a successful home birth VBAC, so let's say your second was the home birth VBAC, should you get pregnant a third time in Sweden, I think they actually will not even approve a home birth midwife to go to your home for another home birth VBAC. They want you back in the hospital for the VBAC. Is that so backwards? I understand they're really trying to minimize risk, but it's just taking away the woman's autonomy. Just give her full informed consent. Especially if you live near a hospital and you're not like in the middle of the Swedish countryside, I'm just worried that we're taking away women's rights and options. And I've already proven to have the successful home birth VBAC, right? So that does concern me. I hope they will change that because I really wasn't anticipating having a hospital birth. I started to ask myself, like, like, would I do that? Like, would I be okay with that? Like a hospital birth by choice, the hospital VBAC? I just, no. Even though it's way lower intervention than in America, I don't want to be in that environment unless it's an actual emergency. So I've thought about that, but what I'm really looking forward to in terms of community is just the ability, the ease in which we're going to be able to call up friends, mainly Eric's friends who I'm friends with too, like when we're over there. Like obviously they're Eric's friends first, but we also get along really well, and they have their partners, right? So they're their spouses or their life partners. And then our kids can hang out so easily. And it's way more casual in Sweden. Like little kids under 6 and 7 especially are not in these scheduled they're not doing enrichment. They're not doing extracurriculars. They're literally just kids. There's a lot of free play outside for hours, which I so admire. That is like my dream. All I want is for my kids to be kids, especially outdoors, year round, no excuses. Whether it's rain or shine, snow or sleet, you just put on the snowsuit and you get them outside. Every single kid has their full length snowsuit. Some of them are 2 pieces, some of them are 1 pieces. They're all permeable. They keep you warm. You can be in all sorts of weather, and they have their snow boots. And yeah, that's just kind of my dream. So the biggest difference is like the dynamic of Eric and me feeling more like ourselves in terms of being able to relate to our peers and our contemporaries. Not just people we're meeting on a whim for the first time at a playground who we're never going to realistically meet up with again. And not just people that we, say like, yeah, like this has happened a lot in Fort Myers. Like, yeah, we have to hang out. Yeah, let's meet up. That sounds great. And it just never comes to fruition. It's never reciprocated. We want real life hangouts with our real friends and for our kids to be friends together. It's just easier when we're there. We have been there 5 times together since we've met. Obviously, the best time of year to be in Sweden is the summer. I am very afraid as a Florida girl to endure the cold, long, hard winters. And yes, this is something I've given a great deal of consideration to. I will have to be much more attuned to making things mysigt, which is the Swedish version of hygge. You've probably heard of hygge, the Danish term for cozy. Maybe you think it's like hygge or, hygge. Hygge is Danish, mysigt is Swedish. So Swedes basically do a very good job of making their interior home space, like their sanctuary. It's super cozy, minimalist design. I also love that. I'm a minimalist. I hate clutter. I hate a bunch of like made in China plastic pieces and with like the tiny parts. I'm really excited for just beautiful, simple, functional, minimalist aesthetic. I have no problem with us moving into an even smaller home, which yes, we will move into an even smaller home. Right now our home is 1,700 square feet. It's a 2 bathroom, 3 bedroom, 1 story. Our home will be smaller, still 3 bedrooms, maybe 4 bedrooms, but those bedrooms will be tiny and it'll have 2 bathrooms. It will be paying probably like 3 times the price. We'll be buying our home. So first we're going to just rent, then we'll buy. I'm excited to live, walking distance to friends and family. I mean, we do have that here now, but again, it's just with our one family member. So, what else? We talked about digital ID, the school system. I will miss, I think people just being more personable at first here at surface level. Like whenever I go to the ICA, which is the Publix of Sweden, it's like the main Swedish supermarket chain for just your down the line, basic standard foods for all. You are expected, I'm going to sound like such a princess right now, like a diva, but over there, I always forget at first, but you're expected to bag all your own groceries. There's no eye contact, no conversation made. And yeah, you bag all your own groceries. And I'm so spoiled here. I'm so used to at the grocery store, they bag your groceries for you. And even when I was pregnant, someone at Whole Foods would always ask if I would want an escort to the car. Like, and I thought that was so nice. That would never happen in Sweden. So it very much is every man for himself. You know, we've also gotten a little bit complacent with the conveniences here. Like, do I love being able to order whatever we need that we're out of stock and through Amazon and have it delivered the next day? Yeah, I do love that convenience, but I'm also aware that it's probably not good for me. Like that instant quick hit, that easy fix, not having to work so hard for things. It's probably honestly better for me and for our whole family to like, and Eric reminds me like, you know, we didn't have Amazon forever. This is fairly new. And Amazon has not really made its way over to Sweden. So yes, it's technically possible, but you still actually, it's pretty weird. If you get something from Amazon, you usually still have to go to like a local convenience store or like a post office to pick up your package. It's pretty bizarre. So at that point, you might as well just go get the thing you needed at the convenience store anyway. It's probably better for us to have to work for it a little bit and not have all these conveniences at our disposal like we do in America. What else? I am going to miss being able to so openly share my views, especially with like new moms I meet at the playground. I'm always surprising myself that like whenever I open my mouth up about a topic, the moms around here are like, oh yeah, I actually do think that way too. I just didn't think anyone else did. So that's happened more often than not. I'm probably going to be a little bit of like a political and social pariah or outcast in Sweden. I will be keeping my views to myself. If someone asks me what I do, I will be sharing the podcast, knowing that there is a risk that they, the Swedish way would just be they want to avoid conflict altogether. So they probably would, deflect and avoid conflict and choose another topic, which I actually think is fine. I have no problem with that. Like, we don't have to talk about all these things, you know. What else? I'm going to miss, the fact that it is really easy to just put on Birkenstocks and shorts and a t-shirt and step outside year round here in Florida. It's convenient. It's comfortable. The summers are terrible, but I love any other season. I'm a little bit nervous how I'm going to do in the winter, but I think if I was single in the winter in Sweden, it would be kind of more sad and like lonely. I think because we have kids to keep us so fulfilled and entertained and active, there's not going to be much time for that. And maybe I'm just going to like crash at 7 p.m. anyway. But yeah, in peak winter in Stockholm, keeping in mind that's not even the northernmost part of Sweden, but just in Stockholm, the sun rises at around 8:30 in the morning and sets before 3 p.m., sometimes at 2:45. So, but again, you just get used to it like wherever you live, Eric certainly adjusted to Florida, being a Swede. So certainly the least I can do is try to adjust to Sweden. I'm trying to see if I've left anything out. I think socially and politically, a huge culture shock is going to be in America generally, like people in my boat, like the socio-political boat I'm in, we tend to automatically distrust government, question and doubt things that three-letter agencies tell us that is the go-to because they've proven themselves to be wrong so many times in the past and they're motivated by other agendas and money. And we like smaller government that doesn't interfere with our day-to-day and our family life and our decisions. In Sweden, the go-to is there's a lot of blind trust in the government. You have like one news station, and believe me, I don't love either news station, either of the main ones we have in America, and I do prefer independent journalism. Even independent journalism has been corrupted, but I do prefer, let's say, under the radar, independent journalists, Even the news station that is more politically aligned with me, I still am not a fan. But in Sweden, imagine just having one main state-funded news station, right? So it's already funded by the state. So you know it's, of course, super biased and corrupted, even though all news is anyway. I don't love how the state controls decisions around healthcare, the news, the school system, food, like everything. I think people in Sweden in general have become too complacent, letting their guards down, trusting the government. I get it. They feel the government hasn't given them a reason to distrust them yet. Why fix what ain't broken? And they have a lot of benefits in their social infrastructure. I just think it's important that even if things have been working out well, you continue to use discernment always. Always think critically. And remember, the government isn't some magical being. It's not God. The government is just run by individuals, and individuals are prone to error. They make mistakes. Policies change. People have regrets. The government is not omniscient nor omnipotent. So I hope I don't sound too radical to my future Swedish friends. I have actually, thanks to Instagram, Eric actually showed me a reel of this woman who is pretty radical with her views in Sweden. I think she's completely normal, talking about how seed oils are bad and it's actually not saturated fat that is harming you and we need more of it. Like, that is pretty radical talk in Sweden. And she's openly talking about that also, like, the woke agenda. And I appreciate that. And I DM'd her and I'm like, hey, we're moving here. Where do I find people like you? And she hooked me up in a cool WhatsApp group of other like-minded women and moms in the Stockholm area. So apparently they're there. They're very underground. They're, afraid of being critiqued. But I think that another big change will be the fact that like the kids there is going to be no flexibility or wiggle room with like forest school or, homeschool co-op. Like, had we stayed here, I envision having my kids in homeschool co-op. That doesn't exist. It's legally not allowed to exist. So our kids will be in the public school system. And I know if you're a mom like me, that sounds absolutely terrifying. The public school system, though, in Sweden is still light years away. I know this is hard for us to wrap our heads around or like actually grasp. It's still light years away from what we have in America. Is it perfect? No. But they're not dealing with nearly the level of problems that we deal with in public or private school system. And again, they're allowed to be kids. We're not putting these crazy expectations on them. So I have no idea what it's like to not be around my kids all day, every day. This is a very foreign concept. But it's not going to be all day, every day. It's going to be from like 8 a.m. to 2 or 3 p.m. For Lucy, it would be like 9 to 2. And for Julian, like 8 to 3. Ish and there's a ton of flexibility. We have more earning potential here financially and we pay less taxes. So we will be making less there and paying more taxes, but in exchange, getting more access to the benefits, medical, school system, parental leave. So yeah, if we have baby 3, Eric would also have 8 months of paid leave after my 8 months of leave. That does raise questions for me, and I would love to know if there's any Swedes out there, or hey, any Scandinavians. So if you're from Norway or Denmark and I'm sure you have a similar system going on. What do you do if you want to partake in extended breastfeeding? Because the relatives I know and their friends, they exclusively breastfed for like the first 8 to 9 months on demand, no bottles, but then did cold turkey weaning when they had to go back to work because that was outside of the home. And then dad took over with formula in a bottle. So I only wish to exclusively breastfeed my kids. Would I pump breast milk into a bottle? I would do that as a last resort. Yes. I hate pumping. I would love to never do that. If I have to, of course I would do that. I'm just curious. Like, the only way I've seen it done so far with the very small circle of friends and family I have over there is at that 9-month mark, Dad is taking over with formula in a bottle, and that's just not an option for me. So as someone who doesn't require formula, I don't have low supply. Even if I did, I would choose donor milk first. So my plan in Sweden is I want to be focusing on the podcast, as well as, podcasting, growing the private community we have, and nurturing that, as well as the potty training side of things, seeing clients one-on-one, virtually, all over the world, which I have been doing. Also, I could do in person, and even leading small group workshops, whether it's at local preschools, whether it's like, hey, there's a group of moms that want to figure this out, and whether that's, virtually over Zoom or in person. I actually recently in Bonita Springs ran an in-person workshop that was wonderful. Everyone was so engaged. We had a great time, and it was a great way to almost kick off the new year and give these moms the sense of like vigor and verve of, we're going to get this done the right way the first time. I'm trying to think if I'm leaving anything out. In America, generally, we have more space. There's more conveniences. So even though you're in the car a lot, that part's like inconvenient that you can't, let me start over. It's really late at night. Not in America. America is massive. Not even in Florida. Florida is huge. I'm talking about in our suburb of Fort Myers. It just, everything feels like it's in a strip mall. Also just not having access to, again, I'm going to sound like a diva, but even though we cook nearly everything from home and eat almost all of our meals in, it is nice when you want to go out to a cafe to have like a really good quality one. And I can count one good cafe near us that I really like, where it's like quality coffee, quality baked goods, like good interior, good service, just one all around. But imagine having a plethora of those all within walking distance. I miss that part of big city life, like we all do. We're the type of people who just want really good quality drip coffee with normal cow's milk in it. To me, coffee is not like 5 pumps of vanilla syrup, 3 cups of caramel, cold foam, whipped cream, chocolate chips, like that. I'm sorry. That is like a dessert from the Cheesecake Factory. That's not a coffee. No offense to anyone who's ordering that thinking that's a coffee. That's not coffee. We're ready for the European way. Again, we are ready. We're okay with the setbacks and the drawbacks. I am going to bring up something a little bit, I don't know if you want to call it cultural, political. It's probably a combination. This is going to unintentionally offend some of you, I'm sure, but I am Jewish. And I've always felt very welcome and very safe in Fort Myers. I am very lucky that there haven't been any, let's say, violent or intense, scary political demonstrations or rallies from people that are using Jews as a scapegoat for anything that has happened in or near Israel. I'm very grateful that we have not been privy to that in this city. And we have a really strong, tight-knit, wonderful Jewish community here. I don't take for granted that I feel safe that my kids are able to grow up Jewish here. Even though we're not conservative, we're not Orthodox, we are a little bit more secular reform, you could say. Yeah. Now, a lot of people do not know this because mainstream news doesn't share it. And even the news in Sweden doesn't quite put their finger on it. But, unfortunately, Sweden, like much of Northern and Western Europe, has been a bit radicalized over the last decade. This is not something I've been thrilled about. I do feel like there's a part of me that is going to have to, and I don't want to have to do this, but as a mom, I'm a little bit scared to either like downplay my Judaism and my kids' Judaism, or just kind of see, this is what they want you to do, right? Like they want you to downplay your identity and who you are. This is their goal. And I don't want to, and I'm not going to say who they is. Like, I don't want this to become that kind of podcast. If you know, you know. If you don't, you can look it up or you can DM me if you have questions. But look, if you're Jewish and listening to this, or if you have close friends or family who are Jewish, if you stand with the Jewish people, you get it. And by the way, like, Jews are not a scapegoat for anything that's ever happened in Israel, especially American Jews. And I'm not going to say good or bad or whatever. I'm just going to say, like, we are our own people, you know? And yeah, we're literally in a different country. And I'm not taking a stance because I'm being a coward. I have been very vocal about my viewpoints at various times, but the reason this is a part of this podcast is, you know, this is a part of our identity. This is a part of our children's identity. Judaism is an ethno-religion. It's not just about being a religion. It's an ethnicity and a religion hybrid. And it's a big part of our identity and culture. And it is scary. I don't want to have to go through a whole history lesson and debrief, but there was this, I've alluded to this in prior episode. There was a big social experiment that happened about a decade ago, probably exactly a decade ago, with Sweden opening its borders to asylum seekers and migrant refugees in very specific countries in the Middle East. And it kind of went wrong and awry. And there is a common thread of ideology that these individuals espouse. And there is a lot of anti-Semitism that stems from that. Let's just put it that way. So, yeah, I've had to sit with this. How am I going to safeguard my children and play offense instead of defense, especially with Julian, who's very curious, very verbal. He's going to be in a whole new zone. We're not going to be in our safe little bubble anymore in Fort Myers. He's going to be in a different type of environment. And how can I safeguard him so he doesn't feel shame over his identity? He doesn't feel like he has to hide himself, but also, what if he is really loud and proud? And then how am I going to be able to sit with the fear of that? And then everybody is going to have their own explanation of and rendition of certain historical events that have gone on, that are continuing to go on. And this raises a lot of questions for me as a mom, like, how do you handle this in an age-appropriate way with your kids? These are some uncomfortable truths, you guys, but you know, I don't hold back. Wherever you stand on the issues that are going on today, just know, I, at the end of the day, only wish to spread love and peace. Unfortunately, there are some bad actors out there that want to target individuals because of their identity and who they are and what they do. And I won't stand by that. So, yeah. Let's see, to recap, we talked about digital ID. I think we talked about medical freedom, vaccine mandates. Yeah, real quick about vaccine mandates, because I know I'll probably get a lot of questions on this. There's a lot of trust placed in the medical system in Sweden. And my theory is, because of that, like, I think Sweden just assumes and expects that whatever their recommendation, not their mandate is, but whatever their recommendation is around vaccines, people will just blindly follow, which most of them will anyway. And like, good for them, right? Because if they work, then why do you care what other people do with their kids? So that said, because education is seen as a human right and everyone has the right to education, no matter their medical background or economic background, you have that access. So schools aren't like, show me proof that you've been vaccinated. That's not what's happening. You don't have to have an exemption. Like, this is never something I fortunately had to worry about. Living in Florida, because they take vaccine exemptions. So Yeah, the kids will be able to attend school. I mean, unless something radical shifts, let's hope it doesn't, but the kids will be able to attend public school. I mean, shockingly, unvaccinated. Woohoo. And what else? What else? Yeah, we talked about the medical stuff, the birth stuff, digital ID. I know I sound like a broken record. I'm still getting used to the whole solo podcasting thing. Bear with me. We talked about just like infrastructure, with the third spaces, lack of third spaces. Look, I am sure I know Florida has third spaces. It's just like swampland, estuaries. It's a lot of like pay per entry. Like, okay, let's go to this indoor play gym or this children's museum or this cafe. I'm talking about third spaces that are just more spontaneous, easy, free to access, and kind of like just beautiful. Not so much of a to do, so much of a hassle. What else? What else? Yeah, and then just the community, the robustness, the diversity and versatility of the community. Having peers who are kind of chill like us and they're down to just have the kids play freely in the front yard or the backyard while the parents sip coffee on a bench together and like talk like adults. Just, it's a little bit more like that. So I'm sure there's a whole lot more I can get into, but let's end it there.